Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Dynes Sports YouTube page and podcast network. Today we've got a great episode. We're actually going to be sitting down with the head coach of the Brock University men's basketball team, Coach Willy Manigat. And he is someone who has had a very, very successful basketball career already at such a young age, and not only as a player, but as a coach as well too. And we're going to be unpacking some of the tips and tricks of how he got to where he is right now, some of the things that he's trying to do out there at Brock University, how to build a program, what goes into recruiting during a pandemic, all of that and more. But just a real quick rundown, because he does have an extensive and very impressive resume already as a basketball player and assistant coach and head coach. So started off as a player, winning 3 national titles at Carleton University. Then went on to have a 4-year career playing pro overseas, came back to Ottawa, ended up going into coaching and became the lead assistant at Carleton University. While he was there, he won another 2 national titles. Go figure, they just print national championships at Carleton University, 14 out of 17 there. But then while he was doing all of that, he was also helping out with the Canada Top Flight Academy prep program here in Ottawa, which ended up winning 2 NPA national titles as an assistant coach over there too. So for those keeping score, that's 7 national titles as either a player or a coach at the university and high school levels just within the last decade or so there. So obviously a lot of success in that field right there, but also had the privilege of going and being a Niagara River Lions CEBL assistant coach during the latest summer series there too. So another very cool opportunity. All of this, and then obviously he went on and just finished his first season as head coach at Brock University there. So a lot of basketball experience, and he's a fairly young guy in his early 30s there. So we're trying to unpack some of the things that got him to where he is and his career, and some of the things that, for those that are, whether you're a player or a coach looking to sort of take that jump to the next level there, what are some tangible things that you guys can do as well too. So if you like what you hear today, make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe. Aside from that, let's hop right into it. Coach Willy Manigat. All right, and joining us today is the head coach of the men's basketball team for the Brock University Badgers, Coach Willy Manigat. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. I can't complain. Outside of the Colts losing today, I'm doing pretty well.
I know we were just saying I'm an Eagles fan too, so I mean we stunk the joint up today, but it's nice to have sports back at least.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've had a very storied career. You were, a university level basketball player, won multiple national championships. You had a pro career. You've had several head coaching positions, associate coaching positions at all sorts of different levels of sport. So, I mean, let's sort of take it back to maybe that juncture of, okay, my playing career sort of wrapped up now. What's that next step for me? Was coaching something that you had always wanted to do and it was sort of always in the back of your mind? Or was it something that someone sort of pointed out like, hey, you've got some real leadership skills. Have you ever thought of going into coaching and giving back to the next generation?
Yeah. I think to sit here and say that coaching was always what I wanted to do would be a bold-faced lie, but I do vividly remember the first time coaching came into the equation for me, and something that I thought about doing down the line, and just even at a basketball camp level, coaching kids, and just thinking about coaching down the line is, as a basketball player growing up, you always get a chance to meet different coaches, and a lot of those coaches leave an impact on you as human beings. I can remember my time back in the days shortly with like Phoenix with Coach Waterman and what kind of guy he was. And but yeah, I just remember when I was in high school, I played club ball, and my head coach for my club team for 2 years was James Darwin, who's now the Ottawa U head coach. And back then he was an assistant coach on the GG staff. And I remember he would take me to practice a lot of times, and I'd also do my homework in the office while he was watching film, and they were gearing up for a national championship run. And I remember, just like most kids, when there's basketball in the background, you're not doing your homework, and me pointing out some things on film and him looking back and being like, why don't you just join the coaching staff then? I think that was my first thought at, okay, coaching is something maybe that I do have an eye for, or that's interesting to me. I mean, I've always thought as a kid that I watched basketball differently than kids my age, which is why when I actually started playing club basketball, like in grade 10, I had some success with it. Simply, I couldn't shoot, I couldn't do certain things. I was still learning the game, but always watched the game differently. So to say I always wanted to be a coach would be a lie, like I said, but that would be my first like flashback to, thinking about coaching at any level.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you just touched on a couple of them there, but obviously growing up, you would have had quite a few mentors as well there too. And, if we remove mom and dad from sort of the equation, who were some of the people that really sort of shaped you as a basketball player and sort of helped you get to that next level while you were coming up through the system?
Well, definitely growing up through a system, I have to give some recognition to James Darwin. I mean, like I said, he was my first club coach, and or I don't know if it was my first club coach, but definitely the one that left a imprint like on who I was at the time, and just playing the game and loving the game. And we spent a lot of car rides together. Like I said, he took me to practices, to tournaments, and playing for him for 2 years. I learned a lot through him. And then obviously I was pretty lucky. Yeah, I've just been pretty fortunate with the coaches that have been a part of my life and part of my basketball journey. Um, and I got a chance to play for Dave DeVera, who just got the job at Ryerson after a ton of years of success as a GG's coach. And then he moved on to McGill, where he took them to a lot of national championship tournaments there. And now he's taking over Ryerson, which is actually one of our conference's rivals. So I'm sure I'll have a lot of battles coming up with him in the next few years. And then obviously, arguably the best coach, not only in Canadian history, but in North American history based on percentages and all that, with Dave Smart. And I was pretty fortunate to come to Carleton and to transfer into that program, because outside of basketball, like I know I talk about basketball with the other coaches, but with Dave Smart, it's not about just basketball and the things that guy's been able to do for my life and to get me going the right direction. So without him and Carleton, I'm not where I'm at today. So obviously I got to throw a huge shout out to him and everything that he's done.
Yeah, yeah. And, it was definitely a unique thing for, you in basketball as well, too, because you not only were a player with Carleton, but then you also joined the coaching staff and you were the lead assistant on there as well, too. What was that transition like, going from player to coach?
Well, when you make that transition, I still struggle with it till this day, and I'm 32, soon to be 33. The hardest part of the transition, I should say, is every basketball player that's ever played this game at a high level, the hardest thing to do is retire. You still think you're the best basketball player everywhere you go, right? So even sometimes with my own players, and back when I had just finished my playing career, and a lot of the guys that have gone through the program at Carleton, I trained in the off season, or I worked them out, whatever the case may be, or scrimmaged against, or was their former teammate, whatever the case. So there's still a competitive side of you that kind of forgets that you're a coach. So I think the early stages, that was the hardest part. Just like, it's not about you anymore. It's you got to make these guys kind of get better, and more importantly, go further than you, which, because you love what you do and you love the program, you love the game, it's not hard to do. It's those moments when there's the bantering between guys talking about how good they are that you come back and go, wait a second here. Don't forget who you're talking to. And I think that was the biggest hurdle in my transition. I like to think that I work hard. So watching film, getting in the gym with guys, working them out, being there in their lift sessions, being a mentor, whatever the case, that I don't think that was the part that I struggled with. It's just being like, okay, like, that guy needs confidence from you, and not to hear that you can do things differently than he's doing, right? So I think any player will tell you that that's the hardest transition they have in between coaching, especially for me. When I left coaching, or got into coaching, I should say, and left playing, I still had a lot left in the tank. I still think that if I were to get in shape, I still have a lot left in the tank. So it's always that back and forth. But it's also the part that I found it's what makes me a good coach, is that the players also still respect what I can do on the floor, and it's easy to gain their attention because they can still see you move a certain way when you're trying to just even show something, right? But yeah, that I not to get off page, but I'd say that was the biggest hurdle for my transition.
Yeah, yeah. Struggling not to have to hop into the actual scrimmages yourself there, eh? Dust off the gym shoes.
And again, Dave had a huge part in that, in helping me understand that too, and sometimes he'd force my hand and tell me to get out of a scrimmage because I'd lose my mind, and reminding me, hey, you're a coach, you're not the player. Like, if you can't keep your emotions in check because you're too focused on winning as opposed to helping a guy get better through the scrimmage, then don't scrimmage.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, obviously there would have been quite a few sort of learning curves for you there, but was there anything that, you know, you look back on now and as a player, you were wondering like, why are the coaches doing this? I don't understand the importance behind whatever they're sort of putting us through. But then once you put sort of that coach's lens on, it sort of clicked and you went, okay, now I get why they kept hammering this point home so much, or now I understand why this was so important that I didn't back then. Were there any of those sort of aha moments there for you?
You know what? Yes and no. There's definitely the reminder as a coach that, okay, this is why your coaches used to do that. And I'll go back to Dave Smart. Like, that's the experience I vividly remember most, simply because it's newer, and that's where I felt like a lot of like my technical and fundamentals for the game grew. Um, and I can definitely remember a lot of those moments as I transitioned to coaching, like where I was having conversations with guys, and I used to go home laughing to myself. I'm like, holy, you sound like just like your coaches, and the stuff that you hated, you sound exactly like those guys. So there's definitely those moments. But even as a player back then, I was pretty fortunate that I had some pretty good mentors, like the Ottawa Blackjack head coach Osvaldo Janti. Him and I are like, I play basketball and I'm coaching a lot of it, and I am the guy that I am today because of a guy like that. So even when he was playing overseas professionally, and I would talk to him, and he'd always remind me, he's doing this, like reminding me the coach is doing this and telling me this for this purpose. So it kind of, that communication and understanding why people were saying things to you or doing the things that they were doing, it really helped bridge that gap. So as a player, I never had to have too much of those moments where I was trying to figure out what the message was. So, but yeah, definitely as a coach, you still have those moments where you're just like, oh yeah, I'm that guy now. But, I try to have a relationship with my players. And I think if you have a good relationship with your players and they understand where you come from and what you're about, then it makes that a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah. And, obviously coaching, much like other professions as well, you got to sort of work your way up through the ranks there. And now that you are, the head coach for an OUA team there, you know, what's some of the biggest differences in terms of what does your day look like between your head coach position now versus when you were, say, an assistant coach with the Ravens? What does your sort of day-to-day changes look like?
Honestly, just more administrative work. And that's the part that people don't talk about when everybody wants to be a coach, right? And I'm sure in your process here, you've interviewed a lot of guys that aspire to be coaches or just people that and it's just like sometimes you don't exactly know what coaching is till you're sitting in the seat. I was pretty fortunate to be privy to having a coach that was in transition towards a new phase of his career where he would become more of an administrator or overseer of a program himself. So he allowed me to do a lot of the administrative work, which prepared me for it. I also was the varsity administrator at Carleton during my time as an assistant coach for, I'd say 6 to 8 months or so. So that side of it was the side that really opened me up to the actual challenges that head coaches have, being able to work with all the head coaches on campus and figure out their day-to-day. So it prepared me to actually expect what to do or what the expectations would be. So that's the part, like the basketball side, not that it's easy, but it's the side that you're comfortable with as a coach, right? You got to go to the gym, you got to do your practice plan, you got to make sure guys are improving, you got to make sure the individual times are set. It's all the other components of coaching that take time out of your day that you wish you had someone else to do the job for.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so, was it a process of when you saw the Brock position come up, you were all in on it? Was it something that you maybe even struggled with mentally? Of am I ready to sort of make that leap for assistant coach to head coach there, or did you know sort of when that position became available? Okay, it's my time. I'm ready for this.
The funny thing is about my story is that I don't think anybody could ever, that's the thing, right? You never know if you're ready or not. And I think that anybody that cares about you too would also question you whether you're ready or not, because especially in this coaching game, you only get one shot. Very few are very fortunate to have failures at a university or at a program and get a second opportunity to do that. So obviously leaving Ottawa, especially at the time where I was going through job interviews last summer. I don't know if people know this, but I'll let them know. Last year was the biggest turnaround in CIS/U sport history in terms of coaching turnaround. 25% of the jobs in the country started last season with a new coach in that position, whether it was a coach coming from a different program to the next or a brand new coach. But that's the biggest turnover that's happened in youth sports in a very, very, very long time. So that being said, I struggled with it. It was a conversation that I had with my friends, my family, the people that I keep close. Like, thankfully for me, I have a really small circle, so it wasn't like I had to deal with a lot of voices. But yeah, that's a question that you think about all the time. And when I first started coaching, there was a list of programs that I had always said, you know what, if those jobs open up, those would be the ones that I would leave Carleton for. Because I mean, I was fortunate to coach and play at the best program in the country, have a great coach as a mentor, great people around the program to mentor me, and the Rob Smart, even Taffy Charles was a great mentor to me. Last year they brought in, or 2 years ago, they brought in an assistant coach whose dad had been an OUA coach for a long time, and Jamie Campbell. So we had a close-knit group in terms of coaches and coaching mentorship. So obviously weighing those options was hard, but last summer I actually went through 3 job interviews. I applied for Nipissing, Windsor, and Brock, and I was fortunate to get an interview with all 3 of these programs. And when the dust settled, I ended up going to Brock, which was always one of the schools that I had said, if ever that job opened up, that it would be a great place to not only coach, but to bring back some of their glory days, because people may not know this, but Brock is one of the only OUA national champion that U Sports has had in a long, long time. So that was part of the decision, right? Going to a school that had experience winning before and trying to see if you can bring that back. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, for those that are listening right now who do sort of, you know, one day aspire to take on, whether it's, you know, college, university, high school, whatever sort of their path there is, you know, what is the interview process like at sort of that university level for the head coaching position? Because on the one hand, I'm sure it's kind of similar to your normal job interview and you sort of run through your resume and all that. But on the other hand, you also kind of have to paint the picture as far as what your vision for the program is and what direction you want to take it in. So what was the interview process like for you going through that for the first time?
Honestly, like I said, I had 3 interviews and all 3 of them were very different. But the biggest common standpoint, I would say, from those interviews would just be like, you have to sell the university and the panel on A, who you are, B, what your vision is for the program and how you're going to attain and get that vision to come to fruition. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it's an extensive process. I mean, there are a lot of coaches that are looking for an opportunity. There are only 48 U Sports basketball program in the country. So your chances of getting one of the 48 is slim to none as is. So it's not an easy process. Like I said, I was very fortunate to be able to even interview for 3 and to be in consideration and a finalist for all 3 of those positions, and to be able to pick kind of where I ended up. I'm pretty fortunate, and I don't take that for granted. I'm very thankful for it. I can't stress that enough. It's not an easy task. But yeah, one of the interviews was a whole day interview. So I met the dean of the department. Then I had the actual interview process. Then there was a lunch. Obviously, when you're in an interview process, your lunch isn't your lunch with your buddies at a pub and you're having a beer. It's part of the interview.
Yeah.
And after that, I had to do an hour presentation about my vision. After that was done, I had another meeting with the dean and the athletic director, and then we went out for dinner. And again, like I said, even at dinner, you're still really in the middle of your interview. So it was really a full day process for one of the programs. And when I got home, I remember just getting back to my hotel, and I literally just flopped on the bed and didn't move for an hour just because of the mental strain that comes with just having to be on for a whole day, right? So yeah, it's not an easy process, but it's definitely a rewarding process. And if there's any coaches out there that are ever in consideration for an opportunity like that, I would hope and extend an invitation to reach out to me to get some advice, which some actually have in the past, and have actually done pretty well.
Yeah, right on. So for those that are listening, don't expect a quick 1 hour in and out process there for sure. I mean, so you're no longer now a rookie head coach, right? So you've got a year under your belt here, and I'm sure there's quite a bit of things that you learned sort of along the way there. What was the biggest surprise for you in year one, whether it was team performance or just the day-to-day activities that you were doing there? What sort of surprised you the most about what transpired in your rookie season there?
It's funny that you say that. Like, I'm still kind of amazed that the year just came and went, and then COVID obviously hit. I was just emailing a couple days ago one of our supporters and alum from the Brock program, and I was just introducing myself to him because I hadn't had a chance to connect with him. And I said in my email, hey, I'm the new head coach. And then in brackets, I had to kind of circle back and be like, I guess I can't call myself the new guy anymore. So, but the biggest surprise, I wouldn't even say it was a surprise. It's a reminder, and it's always what we talk about amongst coaches, especially the young coaches. Like I said, I was around a lot of mentors. Like, building a program and building a championship caliber program takes a lot of work, takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of attention to details, and takes a lot of patience. And sometimes, being that I was a part of a championship program, even going back to my Ottawa U days, like, we're still a top 10 program and a really, really good basketball team my first 2 years at Ottawa U. And then I transferred to the best program in the national championship contending program every single year. Like, at Carleton, it's national championship or bust almost every year, right? So then you come back, you play professionally, you come back home, and you're now coaching a team. You sometimes almost forget that you were a little bit spoiled. And I think that's the biggest reality and the biggest reminder I had in my rookie year is just, there's a long way to go, and the players having Marcus Anderson or TJ or Phil Scrub or Keza Kajami-Keen or Ryan Edgem or just a long list of great basketball players, right? To just be like, you know what, when in doubt, you have arguably the best players on the floor at all times. That just wasn't the case last year. And, you're always trying to find a way to win games and to try to coach your way to victory and work with the guys to improve their game tremendously and make them grow throughout the season. So I think that was the biggest, I wouldn't say surprise because I wasn't surprised by it, but just a snap back to reality moment for sure, that you don't have the spoils. You have to build these guys up, and you have to find a way to cover your team's weaknesses as a coach. And I was pretty fortunate to be able to bring in a guy from Ottawa that I have a trust factor with, that works extremely hard, that was amazing. He also was a coach with the Ottawa Blackjack this summer. And he's won a CJEP championship and built his own program before. So my lead assistant, Brandon Edwards, was huge in helping me overcome that stuff. So yeah, I'd say that's the biggest surprise or snap back to reality.
Yeah. And, you touched on COVID there. Obviously, COVID has, turned the world sort of upside down compared to business as usual that you would normally be going through. From, a recruiting standpoint and a, program building standpoint, what kind of an impact has that had on your quote unquote off season heading into September here?
Well, most coaches would say that they recruit all throughout the whole year, right? So obviously, to build a program, any coach will tell you, we just talked about it, you just have to have good basketball players and good recruits. So recruiting has become even more competitive in this day and age. Like I said, last year we had a 25% turnover rate in coaches. So you have a lot of coaches that are going into new programs that have that fire in their belly, that want to establish themselves, just like I want to establish myself last year, right? So it makes recruiting super competitive, and especially everybody's targeting to take that national championship away from a team that's dominated for quite some time, right? So Now you get hit by COVID right in March, which is when usually OFSA would have been like the week of OFSA was after that week was when everything shut down. So OFSA happened, but like there's college, there's national championships, there's prep championships that all are impacted by that. And those are prime recruiting season, right? To kind of close the deal on whatever kids you're recruiting. For me at Brock, they suspended all face-to-face contact. So any kid that was recruiting, everything had to be done just like we're doing it right now through Zoom and virtual calls. Like I would argue I lost one of my biggest recruits simply because he was the one recruit we didn't have a chance to bring onto campus because he was coming from out of province and the schedule just never worked. When he was available, we were either out of town or whatever the case may be, but we had a great relationships. His family wanted him to come down here. We were his favorite place, but he just couldn't pull the trigger on something that he had never seen. How do I commit to a program when I've never even stepped foot in the city? You know, and I don't care how great of a coach you are, unless you're coming with a pedigree that you've won 14 out of the last 17, it's really hard to get kids to commit to something that they haven't seen for themselves, right? So COVID has had a huge effect in that in terms of recruiting. And not only that, we've still been able to recruit and close the deal on a lot of the guys that we had been recruiting throughout the year because that was a priority for my coaching staff and I in year one. But that being said, the most important time in a player's development is from May until the end of August, where you have 4 months with them where it's not about your program winning and losing. It's about making every single player on that roster and on that team achieve new heights and improve on their weaknesses, add things to their game, improve the things that they were already doing great, limit the things that are considered weaknesses in their games. So as a guy who takes over a program in July and late July last year, all I was looking forward to was honestly survive the first year, which we did more than that. We were able to make the playoffs, which was above my expectations. I just wanted to be respectable, and we at one point were ranked number 7 in the country in the preseason, and then we managed to make a playoff appearance, you know, and beat a lot of top 10 teams along the way. But I always had end of April when exams are over. Finally, I get to really sink my kind of grips into the program and really start to build these players up and to build our culture and how we want to do things, how we want to train, how we want to, you know, correct a lot of the mistakes. And that was just honestly taken away for me. And I'm sure every coach has their own version of that scenario. But for me, that's the biggest thing that COVID took away, is the part that I was looking forward to the most after taking over the program was actually the summer, in order to decide, hey, who am I keeping? Who am I bringing in? And this is really the first unit that is really considered our version of our culture or program. Yeah. And we're still building on that. I mean, we'll be able to get back onto campus and start training, and we'll use whatever time we have between now and the time a decision is made on our season as what we would have done in the summer. But still, it's still 4 months. And honestly, forget from the program standpoint, it's 4 months where these student athletes and guys that are aspiring to be professionals lose out on their basketball careers, right? Like that 4 months is 4 months that they'll never get back. And hopefully everything that we did through Zoom or virtually still was rewarding and helped them improve in some areas. But you would know, there's nothing you can do to replace actual time in the gym with your coach, which is one of our advantages as Canadian schools. We don't have rules like the NCAA has, where we can actually be with our athletes during the summer to help bridge that gap.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, obviously the technology kind of helps in the sense that you can, like you said, you can do some Zoom calls, you can do all of that there. Was there any kind of, you know, workaround that you sort of figured out that worked really well for your players as far as being the next best thing to actually being in the gym? Like what were some of the things that you guys were able to do and felt like, okay, you know what, it's not ideal, but we feel like it got some success out of this here?
Well, I would imagine most programs did the exact same thing. Like there's only so much you can do, right? But as long as you do it and you do it to the best of your ability to get the most out of it. So like most programs and coaches would say, we watch a whole lot of film with our guys. And for me, again, like I said, I took over a program that had a completely different defensive, offensive philosophy, spacing, the way that they defend ball screens, the way that they defend actions. So you obviously during the year try to teach it, but the players, it takes reps and seeing it and seeing it and seeing it in order for everybody to really grasp what we're doing and why we're doing it. The most important thing is understanding the why of something, right? It's just like anything else in life. If you're just doing something just because you're told and you don't really get it, you'll never do it to the best of your ability or like give the full 100% because you don't really fully grasp it, right? So that's all we did during the summer. We watched a lot of film. I was pretty fortunate that I think we have one of the best strength and conditioning programs in the country, and our strength and conditioning staff had us at a workout and a plan for each guys individually. They also met and worked out virtually like twice a week to kind of keep the team together and to make sure guys are still seeing each other and still keeping that feel of like we're still the Brock Badgers men's basketball team. So in terms of that, the summer was pretty beneficial. And like I said, we were able to walk through and to watch a lot of film and break down some of our mistakes and what our actual like guidelines and fundamentals and how we play certain things and explain to guys why we do it. And then they go back in their own small pods and kind of talk about it themselves with a coach and kind of build on that and then bring it back to the big group and have discussions about it and continue to just work and do the best that we can under the circumstances and honestly just keep them together and keep them motivated that, hey, there's still a lot of your teammates that are depending on you to get better for next year. And hopefully we'll figure out if we did a good job of that based on the results that come next year if we're lucky to have a season.
Yeah. Time will tell. It'll definitely be an interesting season, no matter what happens, though, for sure. When you are comparing prospects, though, obviously, especially with a basketball team where there's way fewer spots than say a football team or something like that, there scholarships and roster spots are even more important. So everyone knows at the end of the day, skill wins out, right? The most highly skilled players are going to be the ones getting scholarship offers left, right, and center. But for those that are maybe a tier below sort of the super elite, but still university level players, aside from skill alone, what are some of the things that you're looking at that sort of separate who you do decide to actually make an offer, do decide to recruit versus someone who you sort of let fall off your draft board a little bit there?
Honestly, I think regardless of skill level, I think a lot of times what coaches don't talk about, or I wouldn't say coaches don't talk about it, but players don't understand is your character and who you are and how you represent yourself, even through that recruiting process, dictates a lot about whether a coach pulls the trigger on you. Like you can have all the talent in the world, but if you better have a whole lot of talent if you're not going to be somebody that's not, I won't say easy to deal with, where we're still dealing with kids that have a lot of learning to do, a lot of changing and behavioral issues, in order to be the best version of themselves. But there's also guys that are just like, you're just not even worth the risk or worth the headache. And that's the biggest thing. And I think if you're a player that's in that just below that elite standout talent, there's still, if your program has the right eyes, they'll still find you simply because of the things like your grades, how you communicate. We said it, like, for example, a lot of players have lost opportunities at Brock through the summer simply because we'll have a meeting where we're supposed to talk about your recruitment and bringing you onto our team, and you either forget or you're late for your meetings. Like things like that are things that will make you lose opportunities as well. So if you're not going to be one of the guys with elite talent, and for the guys that have elite talent, you should still be on top of that stuff. But if you are a solid basketball player and you also are a guy that is going to help our culture and be someone that I can use or display their organizational skill, how hard they work, that they do the right things, that they study, that they outwork the guys with talent, it's a huge benefit to any program. And that's not something that I overlook. I can't speak for other programs, but I know as a coaching staff, we talk about it all the time. Is this guy going to be able to add something to our culture, especially in the early stages of what we're trying to build at Brock? It's a huge component of what we're looking for. And that's something that can't be understated for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, you just sort of touched on something there as well, too, is, what players sort of understand about the recruiting process versus what the real recruiting process really is are definitely two very different things there. And, for some kids, pretty naively, they kind of think like, okay, well, if they're interested, they're going to talk to me. But the reality is you're going to be talking to their parents, you're going to be talking to their coaches, you're going to be talking to their teachers, you're going to be trying to get a sense for who this kid is as a whole person, right? What are some of the sort of red flags that would maybe turn you away from a prospect if you heard certain things back from one of those sources, parent, teacher, whatever?
I don't have any like specific cases that I can think of, but my biggest thing is, even if there are red flags, um, if a player and the people around him understand that there are red flags, like there are players that I've also brought on board this year, even because for me, it's an opportunity to do what Dave Smart did for me, which is honestly save my life, So there's that part of it too. And coming from where I come from and just what I was around when I was younger, like if you don't have, like James Darren did the same for me, like if it wasn't for him driving me back and forth, I wouldn't have been able to make it to practice, right? Which would have mean that I would have spent my time elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right? And there's some players that are good kids and that just need also some coaches, like mentorship and being there and understanding and helping them grow through life. So it's not so much the red flags. You want to know what those red flags are and make a decision on whether those are ones that you're willing to deal with or not. And if there's like if a kid really wants to come and is really understanding and knows what he's signing up for and wants to make some changes in his life as well, we're not just going to turn him away, because that's the first step to anybody. And you never know, you might turn a kid away and you could have been the person to save his life. So I try to keep that in mind as well for myself, just simply knowing that without the mentorship of Dave and Oz and guys like that I'm not a head coach today. So that's something that I also don't take lightly. But yeah, I mean, you try to figure out what those flags are, and for every coach and every program, there's a trust, like a barrier that you decide, okay, I'm either gonna take this on or I'm not. And I think that's for everybody to decide. But definitely, the better kid you are, the more chances you give yourself, and being organized and taking care of your school and being on time and doing those small things will definitely help your recruitment.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's really well said as well too, right? That's sometimes all it takes for a kid, right? Is to get that chance. If ever there was, a kid who feels like they've got that sort of talent, but they're, for whatever reason, they're, small school, small town, whatever, they're not getting the eyeballs that they feel like they deserve on them. What are some things that they could do to get themselves sort of noticed by sort of those next level coaches or, colleges, universities, whatever?
Well, even for example, I'll talk about my experience at OSSA. I mean, we now live in a world where I think most coaches would admit that most of the elite players are now playing prep or are in the States somewhere playing prep. So even at the high school level, finding kids, it's getting harder and harder. But when you sit at an OSSA game and you're watching kids, what I'm looking for is their ability to be coached. Are they coachable? Do they have a rapport with the coaching staff? Can the coaching staff get after them and not have that affect their play? And more importantly, if it does affect their play, how long does it take for them to get it back together? Does it take the whole tournament, or is it just something that happens and then it's done? And honestly, just how they treat their teammates. Like, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Because in high school, the guy that's able to play at the university level, he'll stand out in the high school league. Does he act like he's superior to everybody else? Because that same player, once he comes into a university setting in his freshman year, and now he's playing in second, third, fourth, and fifth year guys in youth sport, all of a sudden you're not the best player. Like, are you going to be able to be humble enough and have treated people well to be able to get through some of those things, right? So those are the things that I look at too. And the same thing, like even at the prep level, there's a lot of kids that don't make it onto my list simply because I look at how they treat their teammates and how they carry themselves. And it just, just scratches them off my list. There's just your behavior and your character and your leadership skills are huge, especially for me. It's the intangibles that I'm looking at in terms of making that final decision about whether I should pull the trigger or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, we've already covered that not only have you had a lot of success at the coaching level, but also as a player as well, too. So let's maybe start with the player side there. If you had one piece of advice to give to someone who wants to get a scholarship or play at the next level, what would it be?
Be the hardest working kid ever. Just be the hardest working. Be the kid that wakes up at 6 in the morning by himself, and not because you want to show it on social media or do it for the gram. Do it because you want to be the best player that you can be. And when you get on the floors, don't act like any minute is ever. Don't take the minutes on the floor for granted. Work your tail off. Be the hardest working kid in and out. Make your mistake. Play through your mistakes, and just be the kid that I walk in the gym and I go, oh, he's not only the most talented, he's also the hardest working. I want to work with this kid. I think in this society or in this day and age, in this era, less kids want to be that kid. And so everybody wants to be the cool kid.
Mhm.
It's just like I say to my players, right? Like when you're in high school, all the guys that look cool in high school, when you get older, they're not the cool kids anymore. It's the kid that you used to make fun of and call names and be a nerd. They're the guys that are now millionaires and rich and doing super well in their life. And you look back at all the high school kids that you were like, oh, he's a cool guy. Like, where are those guys now, right? So that's my analogy with the guys that I coach with is like, stop being the cool kid. The cool kid eventually becomes the loser. And I know that's not exactly a political way of putting it, but that's just how I look at it.
Yeah, yeah. And now flipping to the coaching side here, and maybe not even necessarily those who want to, aspire to be a university level coach or anything, but what would be your biggest piece of advice to maybe say a youth level coach as far as what should they be doing in practice to maximize the amount that their players will improve over the course of a whole season?
I think at the youth level, even for myself, that's something that I had to learn. And even at the university level, I try not to lose sight of it. It's you are only going to be as good as the players are. So you should spend a lot of that time in making sure you're doing a lot of skill development. And I think a lot of coaches spend a lot of times of trying to find ways to show that they can win basketball games and winning games and at the cost of the players' development, right? Like you've seen it at different AU or club teams where it's like a team just runs around and traps everything, and there's no real like teaching going on. Is just go run after the ball, like go, we're taller, we're bigger, we're faster, just run, which is a thing, which is a skill somewhat in basketball, right? But those players, when they get older and now they're in high school and now everybody's not scared of the trap because they've been taught, okay, just ball fake, be strong with the ball, make a simple pass out of the trap, and then you'll score easy. Like those kids that don't actually learn the game, what happens to them in their skill development, their basketball IQ. So that's my biggest thing that I would say to coaches is just, and that's the same thing that I say to coaches even in Niagara now that I'm here, as we're trying to build like our grassroots basketball in this region, is let's teach the kids how to play basketball and play basketball the right way. The earlier the better. They may get their butts handed in when they're in grade 3, 4, 5, and 6, but when they're in grade 7, 8, and 9, now the skill and the intelligence kicks in, and they're just as big and as strong and as fast as everybody else. All of a sudden, now you're just beating all the same teams that you were losing to, and doing it very eloquently,
Yeah.
to say the least, right? And I think that's the biggest thing is just don't compromise long-term success for short-term gains. And I think it's hard for anybody to do that, just like anybody else in all walks of life. Everybody wants to get in shape a certain way and kind of do a quick thing, a quick fix for it, but is it sustainable? And it's about building grassroots level and the kids and their skill so that it's sustainable when it matters most, which is when they're graduating high school and going towards their post-secondary careers.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. So you're not an advocate of the press all game 2-3 zone at age 10 then,
No, you won't catch me being anywhere close to that. And I don't say that to place a judgment on the ones that do. You can do that, but if you're doing that, also understand that I have to also spend X amount of time teaching other things in order to do that. And it's always about, just like anything else, it's about a healthy balance. Just make sure kids are getting development even for me as a coach, I would love when I get in the gym to just start working on our rotations and our plays. But that won't help the guys that want to play professionally. So the next 4 months are going to be spent on their development and them being better basketball players, better shooters, better passers, better ball handlers, better spacers, things that will actually translate at the next level so that they can improve.
Yeah. All right. Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today. If someone wanted to either reach out to you or find out more about, the Brock men's basketball team, where can they find you or get more info?
They can, honestly, I'm not a huge social media guy, but if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'd say that's the easiest way to do it. Either send me a message on Twitter or on Instagram. Both my accounts are coachwill.13. I think for Twitter, it's coachwill_13 because they don't allow periods. And the Brock basketball team, you can find on Twitter as well, just Brock men's basketball or Brock men's basketball on Instagram. And you can follow us. I mean, I'm super excited about what we're doing in the future. I think we're doing things the way that I think will lead to success. I love living in Niagara. I think Niagara is a great place to have a family, raise your kids, and I hope I'm here for a very long time and can be a part of this community forever. Yes, I obviously miss Ottawa and home, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm definitely going to be back in Ottawa, and I continue to support all things Ottawa and hope that any kid from Ottawa who wants to follow up on my experience and who I am and ask me any questions, that the door is always open. I've always said that to kids. I continue to say that to kids. It's always been the case, and a lot of kids do reach out. So coaches, kids, parents, just feel free to reach out, and I'm looking forward to staying connected with the Ottawa community, and I hope that they support me even from afar.
Amazing. Well, who knows what this season will keep in store for everyone, but fingers crossed that there is a season and you guys are back on a court sooner rather than later there, Coach. And that's a wrap for another episode of the Dynes Sports YouTube page and podcast network. As always, a huge shout out goes to our guest this week, head coach of the men's basketball team at Brock University, Coach Willy Manigat. Hopefully they get back on track and have a actual season this year that they can compete in, and they're doing lots of great things out there, and we wish them all the best. As always, if you like what you saw, make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe. We've also got various social media outlets. We'd love to connect with you guys on there as well too, all of them at Dynes Sports. We've got a few monthly contests going on that are actually wrapping up tomorrow, so still some time to head over there and actually get in on them and potentially win some prizes there, so make sure to check those out as well too. We've got some really great guests coming up soon, some that we're really excited about and we've been working on for a while, so we hope you guys enjoy. Until then, stay safe. We'll see you next time.